Hello and welcome to episode 278 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is June 16th, 2025. Today I'm wearing a tiny little scarf that I sometimes wear if I either just want a little warmth in my neck or just for decoration because it's just tiny and fun. And it doesn't have a project page, it's too old for that. And but I do remember that I was holding two yarns double. One of them was this hairy fake fur whatever yarn in black, and then the other was either a silver yarn or maybe a mix of silver and black. I don't remember. But the way you knit a scarf like that is very simple. You cast on the number of stitches for the length that you want in your scarf, and then you maybe knit 2 or 3 rows. And then you double the number of your stitches. You either do a yarn over between all the stitches or you do a knit front back in all the stitches. Then you knit another 2 or 3 rows. Then you double the number of stitches again. And I think after the last doubling, maybe I knit 1 row or I just cast them off. And because you increase the number of stitches so much, that's how you get this spirally thing happening. And yeah, it looks very funny. And also you can just wear it like this for decoration, or you can, if you just turn it around itself, it just stays this way because of all these spirally things. They hold on to each other, so it's really easy to wear, and I quite like it. So that's the scarf I'm wearing, and of course my pullover is the Multitalent by Nicolor that I've been working on the last couple of months, I would say, and I finished it. I used almost exactly 200 grams of sock yarn, which is a mix of wool, bamboo, and nylon. The main part of the body is exactly as it's written in the pattern, so I started up in the neck. And this is a maximum freedom pattern. So you start with 6 stitches, you do what the pattern tells you, and then you knit until you get a width of something in proportion to your own body. And then you cast on stitches for the front, you knit everything. And then the only change I made is that for the ribbing, instead of just doing a plain ribbing, I followed my sister's lead and I did a pattern. So this pattern is one of the patterns in the Japanese Knitting Stitch Bible, and I did 3 pattern repeats in the neckline, 6 pattern repeats on the sleeves, and 9 pattern repeats at the bottom of the front and back. And since last week, since 2 weeks ago, I've washed and blocked it. I didn't really block it severely. I just laid it flat to dry and made sure that everything was really flat. But it still has made a big difference, and I just love the way that washing always transforms your knitting, and all the stitches look more even and everything looks nicer. And I tell my students and my customers they're not allowed to complain about their knitting until they've washed it. Yeah, so much to what I'm wearing. I think you probably know everything about this pullover by now, so that should be fine. And I have quite a few of projects to go through today, so I'll go straight into the finished objects. And the oldest finished object, I already told you in the last video that this was almost done. So I finished my advent calendar pullover. The advent calendar was put together by several of my friends, but not just for me. We all collected 20-gram leftover balls of sock yarn, and then everybody wrapped their balls in a certain way or certain paper. Then they gave it to me, and I made sure that everybody had some of the leftover yarn of all the others, and then we all had a nice advent calendar that didn't cost anything. And these were almost all the yarns that I had in my advent calendar. There are still a few colors that I didn't use because I just didn't need all the yarn. Some of them I just knit the whole 20 grams with some colors like this one and this one, this one and this one. I just used 10 grams so that I could use more colors. I did not use all of this color. So I used part of it here, part of it there, and I still have some left. And with the rest of my advent calendar, I'm thinking of probably doing some socks with just like scrappy socks. The pullover was inspired by a pattern in a Japanese knitting book, which I could have brought, I forgot, but I changed the number, so this isn't even the exact pullover from the book. I just cast on 100 stitches. I did a knit 3, purl 1, rib for the sleeves. Then I cast on 100 stitches for the front and 100 stitches for the back, knit the shoulder, then divided the thing in half. So I knit 150 stitches for front and 150 stitches for the back. And then I just finish it in reverse order. I sewed the sides together with Kitchener stitch, and I used this neon yellow, which was also in my advent calendar, for both the side seams and the cast on and the cast off of the sleeves. Yeah, the top just rolls inward. On the bottom, I knit a few stitches every other wrong side row, so I have a sort of ribbing at the bottom. And I'm really happy with it. And it's already washed and not blocked, but laid flat. So it already looks really tidy, but it wasn't a huge difference to what it looked like before because there's no lace pattern, there's no special stitches or anything. And I just put them in the washing machine together. So that's why I'm not showing to you unwashed and then washed. If you want to see what it looks like unwashed, just watch the last video. It was almost done, so I didn't think that was necessary. I don't think I'm going to wear this next week in my podcast episode because it's probably going to be too warm, but I will try and remember to wear this as soon as it gets colder. So that was finish object number 1. Then project number 2 are the April socks with Helix stripes. I finished them. I think I only had to knit like half a foot and then the second toe. These are going to my sister, so I again did anatomical toes for her. So there's lots of decreases on this side, almost no decreases on this side. Yeah, the colors, the blue and white ball of yarn is almost at the exact opposite. So everything is like the opposite with blue and white. With the pink, it's not quite as different, but it's also a bit different. So that's fun. And I'll just show you one of the toes in case you haven't seen that before in the socks that I knit for my sister. So if I fold the sock like this, you can see that there's lots of decreases here and almost straight here. So this is the right sock and the other one is the left sock. The toe is not part of the tutorial video. In the video, I just show you how to do the helix stripes and I show you how to knit this heel flap and gusset heel. Yeah, that's it. And yeah, really happy to have them finished. Those were my April socks, so it's time they were finished. And later in the video, I'll show you the June socks. And then another tiny little finished object without a finished project are the July socks. So July is summer, and I thought we probably don't want to knit big things. And some people stop knitting completely in summer. So I decided to do a tutorial video for yoga socks. So not everybody does yoga, but even if you do not do yoga, maybe you do Pilates, or even if you don't do sports, maybe you would like to have socks like this to wear, like Birkenstock sandals with the, or flip-flops with the thing in between the first two toes. You can use those socks for that. And also with these socks, both the socks are the same size, but I use different sock blockers to show that you don't have to be so precise with the size with these ones because they're supposed to be open at the heel and at the front. And so in the video, I'm going to show you how to cast off elastically so that you really get your heel through and how to do the knitted cast on. And I also show how to do these to cross stitches. So it's like a mini cable, but it's not knit as a cable, so it's like a faux cable. I don't know. I'll show how to do that and you can have a look at that. But you don't need to do that for your yoga socks. You could just do a knit 2 purl 2 or a knit 1 purl 1 rib. I would suggest using a rib so that it sits snug and not do just a stockinette sock. And also with the stockinette sock, it will curl at the edges. And it's okay if it curls up here, but down there, I don't think it'd be too comfortable if it was curling there. So I do recommend doing a rib. Yeah, so these are the finished objects. Then on to works in progress. And I'll continue with the socks as usual. And last time I showed you the Nouveau Deco socks. That were the round 6 sock madness socks of this year. This was the first sock that I knit, and everything is correct in this sock except that I omitted one repeat in the leg. And then this is the second sock, and last time I explained to you how I forgot to do those rounds with the 2 dots here. So I did 5 dots here, and then I've continued knitting the foot. I've started the gusset increases down on the sole. So that should all be correct. But the pattern, as I said, I made a mistake and I didn't want to rip back. So I only have 1 purl stitch down here and I have 5 on top of each other there. But I just wanted to show you that nobody's really going to notice. So that's fine. And let me think. I've just started the next chart. So up until here, it's all the same repeat, the same chart. But then here, the new pattern starts, and I've just started the new chart there. So now I'm going to get into this more interesting pattern, and at some point I will be able to knit the heel. So that's the round 6 sock. With the round 7 sock, the 3-color pattern that I changed into a 2-color pattern, I thought I had knit on that, but because it's 2 weeks ago that I did the last episode, I must have knit on the socks right after the last video, but I forgot about that, so I didn't bring them. When I watched the last episode, I realized I had continued knitting. I'll show you next week. There'll be hopefully some more even than I finished the leg. I shortened it, finished the leg, and did half the toe. No, half the heel. So maybe next week I can show you the whole heel. We'll see. So that's it for socks for the moment. A new project that I'm knitting on double pointed needles with sock yarn is the June Gnome. So Sarah Shearer is doing another year of gnomes. She did that once before. And this year, again, she asked people who wanted to join to knit a gnome every month. You can do 1 gnome a month, or you can do it every other month, or you can do it every month. I, of course, want to do it every month. And for June, I decided to knit another Professor Fungi. And that's him. And a good friend of mine who already has 1 gnome that I knit for her asked for a second gnome because the first one is a bit lonely, and also she and her husband love mushrooms, so they fell in love with Professor Fungi. And then I promised to knit her another Professor Fungi for her. And the first gnome that I knit for her, I used this yarn, and I used single color light blue and a single color dark red to go with it. And I have leftover yarns in all the colors. So I decided to knit a matching Professor Fungi so that her gnomes would be visibly related. So I used this glitter opal sock yarn as the main color, and I used the light blue for the color work. But it's really the same light blue as that is also in the yarn. So it's really hard to tell that I used a contrast color. But I made sure to use the light blue only when the main color was not light blue. So I did change the color work a little bit because this is the light blue from the main yarn. So I just waited with the color work until I was back into the blue, gray and red. So that makes it a very special Professor Fungi. I'm very sure that my friend won't mind the differences, and I really hope she'll be happy to get a gnome that matches her first one. And now I'm into the short rows that you knit once the main part of the body is finished, and the short rows make sure that the hat sits a bit to the back so that you have space for the face. If the mushroom head was very straight, it would feel as if the professor couldn't see anything. So that's where I'm at the moment. And yeah, it was high time I started because we're already half through June and I have to finish it this month for it to count towards the Year of Gnomes. Then another small project on double pointed needles are the wrist warmers that I'm knitting out of Hansa Farm's baby alpaca lace yarn. So I'd finished the first pair, knit on different size needles, but turning out the same size because I use different material needles. This was the first one that I knit on 2.0 metal needles, and now this one needed a second one, and I did quite a bit on these. So and I'm really happy they do come out at the same size. I mean, these are the exact same needles, so they should come out the same, but I'm still relieved. So I've done more than half of this wrist warmer. Hope to finish it soon so I can start the third pair. And all 3 pairs will be knit from one 50-gram ball of alpaca lace yarn, which is quite amazing. So that's that. Then I continued, we're into the garment section now, and I have one garment that I was knitting. I'm wearing, one is a finished object, so there's only one on my needles right now. And that's basically off the needles, but it's not finished yet. It's the vest, Friends Vest by Tin Can Knits, and I was knitting it as part of the pattern battle in December last year. Oh, that is, the yarn arrived in December. I think the knit along started, the pattern battle started in January. I have actually cast off the stitches. So you have, for this vest, you have stitches all around the front, the neck and the bottom. And in the pattern, you just knit all the stitches and have a rolled edge. I did not want that, so I did a garter stitch edge around the armholes, and I did the same for the front and back. And I added in one white row in all of the edges just for fun. I've added buttonholes on both sides because that's a trick I learned from Elizabeth Zimmerman. If you do the same buttonholes on both sides, then when you knit, when you sew on the buttons, you exactly know where to put the buttons. So I really like that. And so the buttons is the one thing that's missing for this to be finished. But the other thing that's missing is I wanted to embroider something onto the vest. Originally, I had wanted to put some sort of color work into the vest to add some white, the way I've done it with my snowflake pullover and my snowflake skirt that use a yarn in very similar colors as this one. But then I couldn't decide on a pattern that I wanted to do. And especially as I wasn't knitting in the round, but knitting to and fro, I didn't want to do a proper color work. And I couldn't find a pattern, a slip stitch pattern that I liked. So I decided to do some duplicate stitch embroidery. And we'll see if I can manage to do that this week. And then I have to weave in the ends, and I have to decide whether or not I sew this together. So I knit to and fro because it's garter stitch. I wasn't interested in purling every other round. So instead of knitting the ribbing or the edge in the round, I knit to and fro. I split in the middle of the back, and maybe I'll leave it open, maybe I'll sew it shut. But I decided to first wash and block it and then decide whether I want to sew it or not. So that's that. And then I have 2 other garments that are not pullovers, or they're not for the upper body, but I have 2 skirts that I'm working on at the moment. And one of them is a really old project. I didn't check when I started it, but at some point I started to knit the Even Star shawl by Susan Pandorf as a skirt. So I omitted the beginning of the shawl that starts in the middle of a circle. I cast on so many stitches and then started knitting the shawl pattern, which is a beautiful pattern. I knit the shawl once before as a shawl and gave it away. And so I've finished the main body of the skirt. and then started doing the knit on edge with beads. And then I put it down and left it for quite a while, which is never a good idea because I never know when I'm going to pick it up again. And the other thing that I'm always worried about is getting things wrong if I don't knit on them continually. And that's actually what happened here. So usually I'm quite confident because I follow a pattern, and even if I put it down for a few months, I can always pick it up again, and Knit Companion will show me where I was, and then I just follow the pattern. But the difficult part is if you change the pattern, and this is what I did with this knitted on edge. You can see it's not a very complicated pattern, but yeah, it's quite a bit of a pattern. And in the pattern, there are 5 beads per row that you knit in. So you end up with 5 of those lines with beads. And I thought that was just a bit too much, especially as my beads aren't that little. So I decided to just do 3 beads per row. And I never wrote down which beads I was putting in. So now it's going to be really difficult for all you perfectionists. When I picked it up yesterday and I started knitting the first 4 rows, I put the beads in the wrong place. And after I finished those 4 rows, I checked and I realized this wasn't right. And I just didn't want to go back. I just don't like to undo my knitting if it's not absolutely necessary. So I decided at the end, there's so many beads, it's such a wide skirt, nobody's going to notice. And if they notice, it doesn't matter. So there's 2 beads in the wrong place. They're supposed to be here, down here, but they're not, and I don't mind. So now I can tell exactly where I started knitting again, which is here, and I got until here. So added 3 more of those points, and I will try to not put it down again, but just keep going. It doesn't have to be a lot every week, but I will try and do a few pattern repeats every week so that at some point I will actually finish the skirt and I'll be able to wear it, and also to not forget what I was doing and not make more mistakes. Now the other skirt is a sort of new project. It was a new project in the video I did last week, but we only did it in German. So it was a video with my sister, and we only did a German version. I know that somebody watched it who's English speaking because I got an English speaking question that I haven't answered yet, but I will do that at some point. Yeah, so it was a new project in last week's video, but for those who haven't seen it, I will quickly explain that in the video, my sister and I show the skirts that my sister has knit in a sideways fashion that I have worn on some episodes, and she shapes the skirts with short rows. And we explain all about doing that and how the placement was done in her skirts that she's already done. And we both started a new skirt for that project. And I decided to do a blue and white skirt and chose 3 different colors. This is out of the Aquarell series. This is one of the Wirbelwind colors, which is like Whirlwind, must be Whirlwind. And then Funny Fruits is a really old series, but I really like the 3 colors together. And as usual, or as often when I mix and match opal colors, they end up looking as if it was just one colorway. And this is all that I have knit so far. So in the video last week, I stopped after I knit the white rows, and I've added stripes in the other 2 colors. And the way this works is this is the upper part of the skirt, and this is where I put the short rows in. So I have fewer rows here and more rows here. The skirt is a bit short. I did not swatch. I didn't really mind, because once I've knit all around my body, I can sew it together with Kitchener stitch. I will add a bit of ribbing up here, so I will probably put some elastic in there, and then I might pick up stitches down here and add maybe some lace. Put a lace edging on the lower end of the skirt if I really want it longer once I get there. But this is what I have so far, and looking forward to continuing knitting on that. I think this is the first skirt that I knit in that fashion, but I already own or have owned several of those skirts, and I really like wearing them. So that's that. Then I have another new project. 2 weeks is a long time. And I was talking to my sister the other day and I was saying, what do I do if I have to cast on new socks every month because of my knit along every month? And if I have to cast on a new gnome every month for the year of gnomes, what do I do? Of course, I sign up for a test knit. So I'm testing a hat for Faye Kennington. It's called the Stranded Learning Hat. And I'm using Alpaka yarn by Hansa Farm. It's their Alpaka Decke yarn. I chose those 2 colors. And Faye called it the Stranded Learning Hat because she designed the pattern so that people who are new to stranded color work could practice their skills. So the first bit of color work is fairly simple. It's always 2 stitches in that and then 2 stitches in the other color. And then once you finish that, the next pattern is a little bit more involved. And then after that, we'll repeat this pattern and then the decreases will be without color work. So it's perfect to learn stranded knitting. And I decided to also learn something new or practice something new. I have knit everything in this hat so far with 1 strand of yarn in one hand and 1 in the other hand. I've done that every now and then before, but usually at some point I get tired and then I take both strands in my left hand because that's easier. But with this hat, I have not allowed myself to do that. So, and I already noticed that with this, with like half the color work finished, that it's getting easier and you do get a learning effect if you practice. I'm not very fond of practicing usually, but it really does help. Yeah, I really like the pattern. I think it's really nice looking and I'm looking forward to finishing this. I have time until the beginning of July, which is loads of time to get a hat finished and yeah, really enjoy the knitting. And I'll stay with the Alpaka Decke yarn and I'll show you the blanket that I'm knitting at the moment. I'm knitting the Starflower blanket, another tin can knits pattern. And last week, I think I had 3 of the hexagons finished, and I've now finished more hexagons, and I've sewed most of them together. So I now have this shape. No idea what this is called. Has a lot more than 6 points, so it's not a hexagon. But I've yeah, you can see I've sewn together 7 of the pieces, and I finished the 8th. So I've gone through all the brown colors that they produce, and now I went to the red and the dark orange, and this is now the light orange. The next is going to be the yellow, and then I'll go into the green colors, and I'm going to work my way through all the colors that Hansa Farm produce in this yarn, and I really love the project. And because I am sewing them together every now and then, it's not that much sewing at any given time, and it's not difficult to sew together. And yeah, I love the way this looks, this feels, and I'm really enjoying the project. But about enjoying a project, last week I also showed you the beginning of the Mandala Madness blanket that I started crocheting to have a new crochet project. And I so love this project. I really had to force myself to stop, so I wouldn't finish like half the blanket already. So last week I showed you the first part of the pattern. It's still divided into 18 parts because it used to be a mystery crochet along. So this is the first part, and I told you the next part was going to be 2 purple colors that I hadn't used before. So these are the 2 purple colors. Then the next part involved orange and red. And the next part was yellow and, for me, white. In the original, this is a darker yellow and a lighter yellow. I didn't have a lighter yellow, so I decided to use the white. And I just love this. Look at this. It's so colorful. There's still 3 colors missing, and but I just love it. So the purple part was fairly straightforward. Then the red and orange. There were 2 rows, 2 rounds where you had to use 2 colors. So for some people that might be a challenge, and you can see the yarn that I was carrying through, but that's okay. And then this was a funny bit of pattern, and yeah, then it went to the yellow and white. These popcorn stitches are the same as the orange ones here, so things do repeat every now and then, like this folded double crochet repeats here with the purple, and it's a really well written pattern. I really enjoy working on this. On one round, half a round, I used the wrong crochet hook. I was sitting here and I was helping somebody with their project, and I think I was picking up stitches with a crochet hook that was smaller than the one I used for this, and then I just continue working with that smaller crochet hook on the blanket. When I noticed, I just switched to the normal one. Nobody's going to tell which half round I crochet with a smaller needle. So yeah, no perfectionist here. But I so much love it. So the next bit is going to be the neon green with the other green that I'm going to use. So that's one of the colors that's missing. And once I finish that part, I can finally use the 2 turquoise colors that are still missing. Then I have all 14 colors in the blanket, and it's just going to grow more and more. Really love this. And that brings me to the last new cast on for today, and that's the June socks. For June, I filmed a tutorial video on how to knit socks with a simple lace pattern. I have not translated it into English yet. I'm sorry. Most English tutorials come out like a month too late, but better late than never, I think. So I will work on it and do it as soon as possible. I picked this color out of the Schafpate series. So Schafpate is like sheep, what do you call pate? Godparent, something like that. So this is yarn that's from German sheep, and with from selling this yarn, they always donate €1 per ball to keep the shepherds working in the south of Germany using the traditional methods of shepherding, and then they use the yarn and they dye it in Germany. They completely produce the yarn in Germany. So I think it's the only proper German yarn that I sell. And this was one of last year's colorways. And I really liked last year's series, but for some reason I did not sell a lot of it. So I've put it back into the shop window, and I decided to use some of it myself and to promote it again. And this is the color I chose for the June socks. And this is what I have so far. I decided to knit them 2 at a time again. So I'm using the yarn from outside and inside the ball. And I started with a 2x2 rib because the lace pattern is uses the 2x2 rib. So I'm using the knit stitches to put in some very simple lace pattern, and the pearls I just keep purling. So the sock is really elastic and it's just a little bit of a pattern, but I think it looks quite nice. It's not difficult to knit, and if you've never knit lace before, you might want to give this a try. And you could do wrist warmers with this. You could cast on more stitches and do a loop cowl kind of thing. You could even knit a hat in that pattern if you wanted, or sleeves or a pullover. So there's many uses. I actually have a pullover that's knit in a very similar pattern, not the exact same, but a very similar pattern out of cotton. So maybe I should wear the pullover while I'm still knitting on these socks. That'd be fun. Yeah, but that's that. I think that's everything I knit and crocheted last week. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!